Tucked away in the rugged beauty of England's Lake District lies a stretch of water known as Wastwater. Measuring about 3 miles in length, it sits nearly 260 miles northwest of London. On the surface, the lake looks calm and ordinary, but beneath it hides a disturbing secret that took years to unravel. Wastwater isn't the widest or longest of England's lakes, but at roughly 260 feet deep, it holds the title of the deepest lake in the country. This unique feature has long made it a favored spot for divers, military, police, and even search and rescue teams, who come here to train in challenging conditions. It was during one of these dives, back in October 1976, that a group of divers stumbled upon something strange. Resting on an underwater ledge near the deepest point of the lake was a large, oval-shaped bundle, about 3 feet long and 1.5 feet wide. The object was tightly wrapped in fabric and carpet, secured with rope and electrical tape. Despite its modest size, it was surprisingly heavy. The divers were intrigued but not alarmed. Instead of reporting it, they treated it almost like a training tool. They would haul the bundle off the ledge, swim with it to test their stamina, then place it right back where they found it. Oddly enough, they didn't find it suspicious. In their eyes, it was probably nothing more than a pet wrapped and sunk, something locals were known to do with their deceased animals. Over the years, divers often encountered small carpet-wrapped packages in the lake, so this larger one didn't strike them as unusual. Years passed. Then, in 1983, a new disappearance shifted attention back to Wastwater. A 21-year-old French tourist, an avid hiker accustomed to the French Alps, vanished while exploring the area. She didn't speak much English but was friendly, and she had joined a small group for a moderately challenging hike. At some point during the trek, she became separated from the group. At first, the others assumed she'd simply wandered off and would reconnect later. But when she never showed up at their meeting point, concern grew. When her family in Paris hadn't heard from her within 2 days, they contacted authorities. What followed was one of the largest search operations in the park's history. Helicopters, rescue dogs, divers, and alpine teams scoured the area, but no trace of her was found. The mystery deepened in February 1984 when another diver revisited that strange bundle resting in Wastwater. Unlike the divers before him, he suspected something sinister and reported it to the police. That same afternoon, police divers pulled the package from the depths. With just a few cuts of a knife, the truth was revealed. Inside were human remains. At first, no one knew who the victim was or how long the body had been submerged. What stood out was the shocking state of preservation. Despite being underwater for years, the body showed almost no decomposition. So much so that even the woman's mascara remained nearly intact. It was quickly determined, however, that this could not be the missing French tourist. The woman inside the bundle was clearly middle-aged. Then came the crucial discovery. On her finger was a wedding ring, engraved with the words, Margaret November 15th, 63 Peter. The woman, soon identified as Margaret Hogg, had lived an outwardly comfortable life. In 1963, she had married Peter Hogg, an airline pilot 19 years her senior, while she herself worked as a stewardess. They had 2 children together, traveled for work, and seemed well settled in the upper-middle-class lifestyle. But their marriage wasn't as picture-perfect as it appeared. By the early 1970s, the relationship had soured. In 1973, Margaret began an affair with an American banker she'd met during a flight. She didn't keep it a secret. Peter knew almost immediately. He tried to tolerate it for the sake of their children, but Margaret was said to flaunt her infidelity, using it to provoke him. Arguments became constant. Their busy work schedules meant they weren't always at home together, but when they were, the atmosphere was tense and toxic. Sometimes these fights even turned physical. Despite all this, they stayed under the same roof for 3 more years. But in October 1976, everything came to a breaking point. Margaret had just returned from a week-long holiday with her lover. Not long after walking through the door, she disappeared from Peter's life and from the lives of their children. Peter told friends and family she had run off with another man. Yet, strangely, he waited nearly a month before filing a missing person report. He also wasted no time beginning divorce proceedings. Police looked into her disappearance, but with no clear signs of foul play, the case went cold. It seemed Margaret had indeed chosen to leave. By mid-1977, everyone assumed she was gone for good. But nearly 8 years later, her body surfaced, thanks to that bundle in wastewater. News reports about the discovery quickly spread. Family and friends recognized the ring, and dental and marriage records confirmed it. The body was Margaret's. The focus turned to Peter. Investigators confronted him, and though he denied involvement, a search of his home revealed damning evidence. Bloodstains hidden beneath the master bedroom carpet, and rope and fabric matching those used to bind the body. On March 4, 1984, Peter Hogg, then 57, was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. During his trial in London, his defense tried to paint him as a man driven to desperation by years of infidelity and humiliation. Margaret's lover even testified, describing their Dorset holiday just before her disappearance. He suggested that her sudden return home may have triggered the fatal confrontation. Realizing the evidence against him was overwhelming, Peter eventually confessed. He told the court that after yet another heated argument, Margaret had lashed out at him, throwing things, striking him, even kicking him. In a moment of rage, he struck her back and gripped her neck until it was too late. Faced with the consequences, he said he made a choice: confess and risk losing his children, or cover up the crime. He chose the latter. He stuffed her body into a dry-cleaning bag, bound it around a concrete block, wrapped it in carpet, and tied it with rope and tape. Then, under cover of night, he drove nearly 270 miles to Wastwater, rowed a dinghy to its depths, and pushed the bundle into the dark water. The jury, however, accepted his claim that it was a crime of passion. Instead of murder, he was convicted of manslaughter. To the shock and outrage of Margaret's family, Peter Hogg received just 3 years in prison for manslaughter, plus an additional year for obstructing a coroner and committing perjury in his divorce filings. Ironically, if the bundle had not landed on that narrow ledge in the lake, Margaret's body might never have been found. Without it, Peter may have escaped justice entirely. And as for the young French tourist who disappeared in 1983, her fate was discovered later. In 1985, her remains were found in a boulder field high above Wastwater. Evidence suggested she had fallen from a great height, a tragic accident, unrelated to Margaret's case. On April 13, 1977, a couple named Charlie and Mavis returned to an old farm property they once owned, about 8 miles west of Tofield, Alberta, Canada. Their goal was simple: to salvage a septic tank pump before buying a replacement. But instead of finding equipment, they stumbled upon something horrifying. Inside the property's abandoned septic tank, a human foot was sticking out of the murky water. At first, they thought it had to be a sick prank. But the sight was too real and too gruesome. They hurried straight to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detachment in Tofield, who immediately dispatched officers to the scene. What they found looked like something out of a horror film. The old septic tank, about 6 feet deep, contained not just stagnant wastewater but a badly decomposed body, stuffed inside head first. The corpse had been loosely wrapped in a yellow bedsheet and tied up with nylon rope. The officers, lacking forensic tools or protective suits, had to improvise. Using nothing more than an old ice cream pail they found nearby, they spent over an hour scooping out foul water by hand until they could finally pull the body free. News spread quickly, and the unidentified victim became known by a haunting nickname: Septic Tank Sam. Even in its early stages, the investigation revealed this was no ordinary killing. Whoever Sam was, his death had been brutal, almost ritualistic in its cruelty. He was dressed in simple work clothes: a blue Levi's snap-button shirt, a gray undershirt, jeans, and imitation wallaby shoes. Nothing about his clothing revealed who he was. He carried no identification, no wallet, nothing. But the killer had made a critical mistake. Before dumping him, they had doused the body in quicklime. The idea was likely to destroy evidence and accelerate decomposition. But in a cruel twist for the killer, the opposite happened. When mixed with moisture, quicklime actually preserves tissue. Instead of erasing the body, it preserved it, locking in vital clues. The autopsy revealed Sam had suffered torture before death. He had been tied up, burned with both cigarettes and a small torch, and mutilated with sharp tools, possibly farm shears. Only after enduring this ordeal was he shot twice with a .32 caliber handgun, once in the head and once in the chest. The sheer violence made it clear this wasn't random. It was personal, likely revenge, jealousy, or punishment for something. One of the first hurdles investigators faced was even identifying his race. The medical examiner initially classified him as Caucasian, a mistake that would stall progress for decades. In truth, he was indigenous, but no one realized it at the time. Lacking identity, the body was buried in an unmarked grave in Edmonton. Yet the mystery of Septic Tank Sam haunted the community. Rumors swirled. Was it revenge for infidelity? Payback for a crime? Farmers even checked their own septic tanks, fearful they might find another hidden body. 2 years later, in 1979, Sam's remains were exhumed and flown to Oklahoma, where forensic experts attempted a 3D facial reconstruction from his skull. For the first time, investigators had an approximation of his face. They also determined he was likely indigenous, around 35 years old, contradicting the earlier report. But even with this new information, no one came forward to identify him. In 2000, his remains were exhumed again. This time, forensic artist Cyril Chan used clay modeling to build another reconstruction. The updated face was publicized widely, on posters, news broadcasts, and cold case files. Still, no recognition. Sam remained nameless. For over 40 years, the case stagnated. Then, everything changed in 2018, when California authorities solved the infamous Golden State Killer case using forensic genealogy, a breakthrough that inspired investigators across the world. The following year, Alberta RCMP decided to apply the same method to Sam's DNA. Their first attempt, using Canada's National DNA Database, failed. But in 2020, they partnered with Othram Incorporated, a Texas-based lab known for solving cases with degraded DNA. The lab managed to build a usable genetic profile. From there, genealogists traced family trees, slowly narrowing down possible relatives. Finally, after decades of mystery, Septic Tank Sam was identified as Gordon "Gordy" Sanderson, a 26-year-old Indigenous man from Manitoba. Gordy's story was tragic long before his death. Born in 1950, he was one of thousands of Indigenous children taken from their families during the 60s Scoop, a Canadian policy that placed Aboriginal children into foster care or white adoptive homes. Separated from his family at age 9, Gordy grew up alienated and struggled with addiction as an adult. By the 1970s, he was living in Edmonton, drifting between places, and occasionally running into minor trouble with the law. The last his family heard, he was planning to visit his younger brother in Calgary. But he never arrived. His sister eventually reported him missing, but no one connected him to the unidentified body in the septic tank. Part of the reason was the initial racial misclassification. Investigators had spent years assuming Sam was white, so they never linked him to Gordy. For over 4 decades, his family wondered what had happened. Finally, in June 2021, police announced his identity in a public press conference. For his family, it was bittersweet relief. They had answers at last, but justice was still out of reach. To this day, Gordy's killers have not been identified. For years, he had been remembered only by the cruel nickname of the place he was discarded. But with his name restored, the story of Gordy Sanderson is now one of both tragedy and resilience. He wasn't just Septic Tank Sam. He was a brother, a son, and a man failed by the system that should have protected him. The stories of Margaret Hogg and Gordy Sanderson are separated by thousands of miles and entirely different circumstances. Yet, they are bound together by one chilling truth. Both were almost lost forever, hidden beneath water or waste, their voices silenced by those who thought their secrets would never surface. Margaret's fate could have remained a mystery had her body not rested on that underwater ledge in Wastwater. Her husband Peter, who carefully planned the disposal, likely believed the lake would keep her hidden for eternity. Instead, fate placed her body where divers would eventually discover it, exposing the truth he tried to bury. Gordy's story is even more heartbreaking. Not only did he suffer unimaginable cruelty at the hands of his killers, but he was stripped of his identity for decades. Reduced to a nickname, Septic Tank Sam, he became an eerie legend in Alberta. For more than 40 years, his family searched, while his real name remained hidden in a grave marked only by doubt. It took modern science, forensic genealogy, to finally restore his name and bring him back to his family. Even so, The killers remain unidentified, and justice continues to elude him. Both cases remind us of the fragility of truth, how easily people can vanish, how quickly the world can move on, and how justice can sometimes take decades. Yet they also show us something else, that no matter how carefully a crime is concealed, secrets have a way of resurfacing. For Margaret, it was a wedding ring that told investigators who she was. For Gordy, it was DNA technology that gave him his name back after more than 4 decades. Behind the headlines and chilling nicknames are real lives, real people who laughed, loved, and deserved more than the fates handed to them. Margaret was not just the woman in the bundle. Gordy was not just septic tank Sam. They were human beings whose stories deserve to be remembered with dignity. And if there is any lesson to take from these disturbing disappearances, it is this: truth may be delayed, but it is rarely destroyed.